In this episode, I visit with author Brent Cassity about his story of committing fraud, going to prison, and redemption in Nightmare Success. Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox back for another episode. And today I have with me Brent Cassity. Brent has one of the most unusual stories I have come across recently. We met at a podcast conference, Podfest Expo 2023. I asked him if he would take some time to come on my podcast and talk about his story, and he graciously agreed to. So, Brent, first of all, welcome, and thank you so much for taking the time to visit with me today.
Thank you, Tom. Thanks for having me on your show. Appreciate it.
So, part of your story is you got into trouble. So, could you
Yeah.
tell us your professional background and what got you into trouble?
Yeah. So I was in a family company, and our family company it grew from about 3 states to 25 states. Um, it wasn't my getting into family business. It wasn't my plan A, but I was going to be a trial attorney. Took political science, theater, and I had a heck of a time with that LSAT. I had a heck of a time with standardized tests. So it just once I got to the LSAT, I realized that that wasn't going to be my path. And the thing was, I made pretty good grades in college. 3.4 wasn't too bad, but boy, you put me on the standardized test, and I went down, 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 down. So I had to figure out what it was I going to do. And so I joined the family company. I'd done sales over the course of my college career, and I thought, man, kind of similar to sports. You have a scoreboard. You win, you lose. Didn't matter how old you were. So it kind of felt good. So my dad had started this company that was not a sexy company. It was prearranging your funeral services before you die. And so you'd freeze the cost, you'd pick out the casket, you pick out your services, your pallbearers, your music, and it took the burden off the family at the time of death. And so it was a service that people wanted, and they saw the need for it, and it was a company that grew. I joined the company when I got out of college, told my dad, hey, you got a big shadow here. Is there anywhere I can go, to see if I could pass, fail? And I went down to Austin, Texas. They just signed up a new state, new funeral home, and I went down there, and it wasn't my wheelhouse. I liked it. It felt good. I promoted myself to regional vice president within a year, and my team won all the divisions of the national contest. So, this young 20-something kid had kind of found his way. Dad really didn't like the sales and operations side of the business because we had a insurance company, something I wasn't interested at all with, Tom. And I just kind of arrogantly thought, hey, I can produce the dollars, and that will take care over there of funding these prearranged funerals. Not a good plan, because my dad had put this company in a trust, and the owners of this trust was my mom, myself, and my brother. That's a longer story, but the reason that was in a trust is that dad had had problems before. He had gone to prison back when I was 15 years old, and he had come back out and made something for himself. Um, and he was quite a interesting guy. Just a quick snapshot of him. He came from a small town, was a valedictorian, won the state championship of basketball. He went to be a D1 basketball athlete. Got out, graduated number one in his law school. Won some big cases, got into business, and he was the guy with the golden touch. But at my age, at 14, my dad told me that he got in trouble with the bank. So the one company that survived all that was this company, because it wasn't in his name. Fast forward, we start growing, and we expand from 3 states to 25 states. And what got us in trouble was an arbitration with our reinsurance company. And not to get into the weeds with people with reinsurance, but it's simply, you have a smaller company, you give the big company your money, they give you a commission, they take the liability. And it's a thing that you can market that you've got an A+ rated company that's part of you. We had cut a sweet deal with this reinsurance company. This was the largest in the world, headquartered out of Germany. And they got a little sideways in the market and said, hey, you guys got a really sweet deal. We'd like to renegotiate that. That went to my dad, and being the guy that he was and being the attorney he was, he said, no, it's not in the contract. Now, looking back on that, that was the day that that was a bad mistake. We went into an arbitration, and with the arbitration, it's a panel. They hear it somewhat like you would in a court proceeding, and try to resolve the problem. That started to hit legal bills, 3 million, 5 million, 7 million, 9 million. And as a small company, it began to hit our capital and surplus. And as that seeped out, as things do seep out into those states we were in the regulatory environment, as you know, Tom, when there's smoke, there is fire. That's the way a regulator looks at something. And it began to be a firestorm of, we need this, we need to look at that. My dad came to me and he said, Brent, he said, we need somebody to go out and speak to this. I can't do it. I'm an ex-felon. I need somebody. We think you'll be a good voice. And at that time, Tom, I got to tell you, I thought, hey, I'm building this company. I'm doing this. And the one company I thought, man, I should have paid attention to was the one that I need to go out and defend. But I wanted to put a cape on the back. I wanted to show Dad I could do it. We had 400 people that worked for us. And I thought, I want to save the day. And there was times that I thought I could save the day. But in the end, we didn't. The company fell into receivership, started a criminal investigation, and there were 6 people indicted. What we got in trouble for was first doing something really stupid with the reinsurance company that's put a red light on us. Out of 12 million documents of this 6-year investigation that I went through, it got down to this 30-year-old company and the value of insurance policies and what they were in a trust, whether they were worth a face value or the cash value. And so what happened is one or the other meant you were overfunded or you were underfunded. And we went through a terrible, and then we also had to deal with the other companies where who the rights were assignable to at the time to pay for the funeral. All those things being what they are, out of 12 million documents, breaking it down to simple, we lost that argument and we crashed and burned and we didn't go to trial. We all pled out. After 6 years of fighting through this, I was worn out. What I did keep out of this was my family. And I have 3 daughters and a wife. My wife was the glue through this. I think, Tom, you met my wife at PodFest. She was at the table with us. And that's what we put a bubble around ourselves and we survived the moment and the event. But in the end, where they really had me, where I couldn't get away from my situation is in 1994, the company was founded in 1979. 1994, Congress passed a law that an ex-felon couldn't work in the business of insurance. I was the owner of that company. So I allowed my dad to work in the business of insurance. That carried a 5-year sentence. I was swept up in the conspiracy part of it, mail fraud, wire fraud, and they stack those things and they make it look really ugly. So at the end of the day, at a family meeting, my daughter said, Dad, you can't go to trial. And I knew I couldn't go to trial. I was, it was really just giving up the battle. I was given a plea bargain for 0 probation to 5 years, and she maxed everybody out. So I was standing there at that courtroom, and I think all the air, Tom, just went out of me. And I was like, wow, how do you think of 5 years and how do you walk through that in your mind? Because everything that you know is here and all of this is unknown. You're going to enter an unknown world. So that's the short part of how we got into where we were.
So when did prison become real for you, Brent?
Prison came real for me it's a good question, because when you fight like you fight, you wake up with it, you go to bed with it, and every day you think you're going to figure this out. When it really became real for me, Tom, was when we had a family phone call. It was I was alone at the house. My kids and my wife were up at our vacation house, and we had a family phone call. It was my dad, my mom, my brother, and my wife. And we basically were saying, we're going to take this plea deal. I was going to go down to the next day, and I was going to fly up and see the family. And when I got off that phone is when it really hit me. Like, wow. I hadn't really even thought about how am I going to live as an ex-felon? What is life going to be like for me, branded, if for the rest of my life living as an ex-felon, walking through life? Can I still be me? And I really started feeling sorry for myself. I started thinking about, my wife that had been so good and such a warrior through this, and my kids, and don't they need like a fresh start? How can they live with the stain? And I had a drink, and then I had another drink, which is not good when you're by yourself thinking about going to prison and pleading the next day. I even got out a piece of paper and started writing out all the things, Julie, you did, and what a wonderful wife and support, and the kids, all the fatherly advice, and the friends, what a great support you've been. And I had another drink, grabbed the keys to the car, went down to the garage, and I didn't know. I turned the car on. I didn't know if I was going to run into a tree or if I was going to just let the car run. At times, something hit me like a lightning bolt, and I thought, "Oh my God, what am I doing? What am I thinking? This, you're the glass half full guy. If you went out like this would be the worst legacy that you could leave your family. A quitter, you're weak, uh, ashamed." And at that moment, I really grabbed onto the difference between a victim and a survivor. And I thought, no matter what happens to me from this moment, this is my rock bottom moment, my prison moment. I wasn't even there. Whatever happens to me, I'm going to walk with with my head held high, and I want my family to be proud of how I'm handling this. If nothing else, I want that to happen. And that's how I stepped into this. The moments weren't easy because everything in front of me was scary. The next day I went down and pled. You wait for sentencing. I got sentenced. You wait for an envelope to show up in the mail to find out where you're going. That was Leavenworth. I'd heard of that one. That's scary. But I do remember the night before I went into prison, and Julie and I were kind of up where you could see down into the prison yard. You could see the prisoners walking the barbed wire fence, and the sun was going down just a little bit, and you could kind of see in the cell blocks. And I was thinking to myself, I wasn't sharing this with Julie, but I was thinking to myself, oh my God, I'm going to be in there tomorrow. That's going to be where I live, not for tomorrow and the next day or a week or a month. I'm going to be there for years. So when I got up the next day, first thing I did before I went in to surrender is I got a Big Mac, because I didn't know what I was going to eat or how I was going to eat. I thought, if anything, as a free man, I'm going in with a Big Mac. So I ate a Big Mac. I got $200 out that they said I could bring to go on my commissary. I remember I hugged everybody in the car, and I went and I stood at the gates of Leavenworth. And Tom, there's no feeling like that. All I can say is that everything I loved, everything I knew was behind me, and everything that was in front of me was the unknown. And I had to figure out, what happens when your worst fear becomes your reality? How do you adapt? How do you survive? How do you overcome? How do you set yourself free? Walking into a thing where you're scared to death, and you think, my thought was watching TV, hell, I could die. But one thing I can tell you is nothing is ever as bad as your mind makes it out to be. Not even prison. It was scary. No doubt about that. But I soon found out that there were people behind those walls that were going to help me. And these tools that I talk about, that I use to steady myself, became real to me. And I started using things that even I had used as a 20-something kid growing up a company. I started using in prison, and I learned some things in prison too. The first thing I learned walking through those doors, Tom, was you got to be humble. You got to check out and look around. Who's getting this right? Who's doing their time the way I want to do my time? To humble yourself. Who's got a prison job that you want? How did they get it? What books are they reading? How did they get those books? What prison routine, what workout routine are they in that I could get in shape and be who I want to be in here? And so I started looking around. I started getting with people, asking them questions, and I started getting into the society, and I found help there. That's something that we can do on the outside. Whenever we're trying to get something started, a new business started, look for people who are getting it right. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Most people who are getting it right will talk to you about it. Most people who are getting it right are pretty proud of what they're doing, and they'll let you know what they're doing. And it's liberating to look, ask, see, implement those things into your life. The second thing I had is the movie Shawshank Redemption. Everybody needs to find their Zawantaneo, even in prison. What is Zawantaneo? Is Danny Dufresne was in prison. He was wrongly accused of murdering his wife, and he goes into prison. And Zawantaneo to him is the whitest sands, the bluest of the blue ocean, the Pacific. And he's got an old boat that he's going to fix up to take people out fishing. And he's got an old inn that he's going to have where people come and his friends, and they watch the sun go down. You could see that when Andy Dufresne talked about that. And every night for 19 years, he chipped through a wall in his cell. And every day, he gave himself a daily victory, letting that wall out into the yard. I tell everybody, whether you're in prison or whether you're out, you got to find your Zawantaneo. What fuels you? What gets you up in the morning? Why are you doing what you're doing? And then what is your plan? How do you chip through that wall? You got to find something that makes you want to chip through a wall for 19 years to free yourself. And everybody's got prisons built up in their own mind. I mean, everybody does. You don't have to go to prison to build up prisons in your own mind. You've got, a bad childhood, parents got divorced, a bad job, bad marriage, whatever, health crisis. All these things happen where people get stuck. But they forget to look forward and what do they want in life and how do they get it. And so that's finding your Zawantaneo is a big deal, because without that, you get into ugly comfort zones and you won't step out of it. That becomes more familiar to you than what you really want. I've always heard this analogy that, if you have a goal without a plan, it's like having a destination without a map. You can drive all over the place, probably run out of gas. But if you have a map and a destination, you can drive right to it. Even if you get in the ditch, you can get back on and get up to your destination. Having the Zawantaneo. The third one is win the day, one day at a time. Life is unfair. Make a difference regardless. This was something, Tom, I did that was like a mind hack for me. My daughter made a calendar for me every year, and it had the family pictures in it. My youngest daughter, Connor, made it. And what I did is every night I wrote in a box of what was my win for the day. And you're thinking, well, how could you find a win for the day in prison? Well, you can. Maybe as I got forklift certified at the food warehouse, maybe I did 2 or 3 extra pull-ups, whatever these things were, that win for the day to get you to the next day. I'm not saying that things are not bad, and we don't have bad days out here and bad days in prison. So if you have a bad day, go all the way down, feel it to your soul, fill in that box, and that was your bad day. My mind hack is don't fill in 2 bad boxes. You fill in 2 bad boxes, Tom, and you find yourself slipping into a week, a month, a year, and then that's where you get institutionalized, on the outside or the inside. So life is unfair. Make a difference regardless. Win the day. One day at a time is a big deal, because if you're sentenced to 5 years, you can't eat 5 years all in one thing. You got to take it one day at a time, and then win it, and you'll start stepping. The fourth thing was learn from your mistakes. That was a big one for me. I was arrogant, thinking I didn't even need to pay attention to the insurance company. Out here in our society right now, everybody's afraid of making mistakes. What are people going to think? How are they going to react? It doesn't matter. If all the great books that you read of all the people who've done great things and built big companies and had successful lives, they make mistakes. They just do. What they do is they learn from them, and they evolve, and they become better. The only thing you don't want to do is make the same mistake twice. Jack Nicklaus says you can make a bad shot on a hole, but don't make 2 bad shots. It really messes up the hole. So don't make the same mistake twice. Make a mistake, learn from it, move on. Huge thing, because how you handle a mistake will make you a winner or a loser in life. The fifth thing, Tom, for me, probably my biggest thing, the thing I was most scared of was don't give in, don't give up, keep being yourself regardless of the circumstances. Otherwise, you will lose what makes you you. I was worried about um, becoming prison Brent instead of Brent. And I think that when you get into situations that you're unfamiliar with, you got to still be yourself. You just got to figure out the situation you're around. I think I saw people in prison, they'd get close to the door, well, say close to the door, to get close to freedom, and they'd catch another charge, another 5-year charge. And the reason why they did that is they'd gotten so used to this ugly routine that they were in prison. They hated it, couldn't stand it, but they became comfortable in it. And freedom became unfamiliar to them and scared them. When I got out of prison, I look around me and I see, Tom, that all the time. People getting um, that institutional mindset that the ugly routine, the routine that you hate, becomes a warden of your freedom. You can't step out of your own thing. The thing they say in Shawshank, I think, is so gripping. Is that Morgan Freeman says when you first come in these prison walls, the prison walls look like they're here to keep you in. And the longer you're here, these walls hug you for comfort. And that's not what you want. You've got to continue to step. And the thing about stepping is that you take a first step, you feel a little bit better, even though it's scary. You take a second step, like, oh, that wasn't as hard as I thought. You take a third step, you're like, I think I can do this. And it's a mindset. It's a mindset. Even if it scares you, as long as you got that thing that fuels you, the thing is, it's your Zewantaneo, that's the thing that will help you step, even if you're scared.
Brent, you wrote a book entitled Nightmare Success. Could you tell us why you wrote this book and how you were able to incorporate your experiences into it for others?
Well, Tom, one of the things I thought about when I was walking the fence of Leavenworth is, wow, this is bad. I don't know if it can get any worse than this. What do I do now? How do I use this to come out? And one of the things I thought about is that I didn't want to waste the experience that I've been through. The experience that I have gone through has been a roller coaster, but I am a person who's still driven, a person who still has a great family, and I still have a passion for things that I want to get accomplished. I wanted to share my story for people who feel like that they're stuck, feel like they can't get a second chance, feel like that life has passed them by, that they can't get there. Because the thing that I fear, and I think most of us fear, and they turn the lights out and tell you things that, what do you really think? You don't want to be the guy that's 85 years old, rocking on the rocking chair, thinking, I wish I would have gotten out on the field, and you stayed on the sidelines. And that's really why I wrote the book. And Nightmare Success, some people say, well, Brent, those two words don't go together, right? Those two words, why did you put those two words together? The thing is, Tom, is those words, whether we realize it or not, they're always together. If you really want success in your life and you really want to set yourself free to whatever you want, you're going to have to walk through some stuff, around some stuff, over some stuff, under some stuff. And once you get there, you realize that you've walked through your fears, the things that scare you, your nightmares, and you've gotten to the other side. I think that's why so many people stay stuck. I was reading a thing about New Year's resolutions, Tom, that was kind of funny that there's 330 million people in the United States that makes New Year's, or there's 330 million people in the United States. There's about 64% that give New Year's resolutions. So it's about, what, 200 million? We lose 25% of those people the first week. They just give up. Can't do it. Bad idea. It's going to be harder than I thought. By the end of that month, 46% of the people have already given up. The interesting thing is the total number of people who make it at the end of the year is only 8% of those New Year's resolutions. So why is that? It's that people get caught and stuck and think, oh man, I don't know. I can't lose all that weight. I can't go for that promotion. I can't. And then they stay in that ugly routine. And it's one of those things that Why do we do it? It's easier. Why do we do it? We stay with the people who make it easier for us. And that's why I think that if you have something that is a plan of action, so that you almost, it's a hack for you to keep stepping, you have so much better chance of getting to where you want to go.
Brent, what are you up to now in your post-prison life besides attending podcast conferences?
Well, I learned a lot down at the podcasting deal because you're not usually around podcasters because you kind of do it on your own. I love having a platform. I have a podcast myself that's called Nightmare Success In and Out, and I interview people who are ex-inmates or people gone through their nightmares, and it's all about what happens when your worst fear becomes your reality. How do you adapt, survive, overcome, set yourself free? And we talk about life before prison, life in prison, life out of prison. And this platform's great because it gives people you don't have to go to prison to listen to the podcast because everybody has something that they're trying to get through. But it's really become a passion of mine. I love finding the stories. I love hearing the stories. I'm curious myself of being able to have these people to talk to. And I think a couple of things happen. People listen to it and they think, oh, I can maybe use some of those strategies. I think the other thing that happens is that maybe it wipes off a little bit of the residue of somebody who's gone to prison. If they hear these stories, that maybe that person with that type of story, I could give them a second chance, whether it's in job or life or whatever. And I think if that could happen with one or two or three people, that could be a great thing.
Brent, unfortunately, we're near the end of our time for this episode, but I wondered if our listeners wanted any more information on yourself, on your podcast, on your book, Nightmare Success, or really any of the topics we've touched on today, what would be the best place or places for them to go?
Well, one of the places, Tom, that's easy is BrentCassity.com. And I spell it wrong. Cassity is not Sean and David Cassidy. It's spelled Cassity. I always wanted to be Sean and David Cassidy when I was young. So it was just a curse that I was a TY instead of a DY. You can find my Nightmare Success In and Out podcast on anywhere you get your podcast. My book you can get on Nightmare Success, Loyalty, Betrayal, Life Behind Bars, Adapting, Finally Breaking Free is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Walmart, and on my Facebook and Instagram. I'm at Brent Cassity. Pretty easy to find.
Brent, I wanted to thank you again for taking the time to visit with me, and I greatly look forward to continuing the conversation about your journey.
I appreciate it, Tom. And I have really enjoyed meeting you when we were down in Orlando, and really honored to be a guest on your show.
This is Tom Fox again. Thank you so much for listening to the Sunday Book Review Authors Podcast, the latest addition to the Compliance Podcast Network. In this podcast series, we focus on authors, as the name denotes. I hope you'll enjoy this series. I hope you'll be back to join us again as we visit with another author. This is Tom Fox. Thanks so much for listening, and we look forward to visiting with you again.